Welcome to the Tin Dog Podcast. This week's show may or may not even have any music because I'm a little bit pushed for time to record anything and get things out to you. But I'd rather not let you down, so here's the show. As I am pushed for time, I'm not going to be reviewing the episode that I said I would be reviewing, which of course is The Unquiet Dead. I've done the show notes, but I'm just a little bit rushed. However, I will be reviewing Destiny of the Daleks, which is the DVD that comes out, I believe, next week. Now, before I do that, there's a couple of things I need to talk about first. First thing is something that's been worrying me for a little while. I have a Wikipedia page, and all of a sudden, something's appeared on the Wikipedia page which is a worry to me. Basically, they're thinking of removing it on the grounds that people haven't got links to me. People don't aware of me. They think it's some sort of advert rather than some sort of information store. I'm not completely sure as to why it's up for removal. But basically, if you enjoy my podcast and you've written about it on your website or you've mentioned it on your blog or anything like that, please go to Wikipedia and mention it, or email me a link to your reference to it at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. That way I can add that to the Wikipedia page as a link to your site, and my Wikipedia page can survive. Another thing is, if you enjoy this show, I would be enormously grateful if you could go onto iTunes and leave a comment or a review of my show on that page. I'm aware how dangerous this is, because if you don't agree with me, or you don't enjoy the show as much as you used to, or something like that, I mean, let's face it, a review saying a show not quite as good as it used to be but still worth listening to probably wouldn't be the sort of review people would want. But it might be true. That might be how you feel, so I'm not going to be all editorial at you, but that's fine. So, if you could do me an enormous favour and visit iTunes and possibly put a review on there for me, that would help enormously. So, this week, Destiny of the Daleks. Ah yes, Tom Baker, Davros, Lalla Ward's first story. It has some marvellous memories, but then again it is old school. So, as a Dalek story, does it hold up with time? Yes, it does. It is the last story on DVD to be released with Davros in it, thus allowing them to bring out this Christmas the new Davros boxed set, which contains all of the Big Finish audios and a load of extras that I must admit I'm a little bit jealous about. But as I seem to already own all the individual titles, I just can't justify buying the box set. It's a shame, but, you know. However, if you don't own many of, or indeed any of the classic series with Davros, I would suggest, as a lovely little bit of an investment, buying that. I mean, let's face it, if you wanted the Key to Time boxed set, you really should have it by now, because it's getting increasingly difficult to track down. The Davros box set could head the same way quite quickly. I'm not advertising the entire Davros box set, or even talking about that. All I'm talking about today is Destiny of the Daleks. The last time we'd seen the Daleks was in Genesis of the Daleks, which, if you remember your History of the Daleks podcast from a few months ago, was the point where history may or may not have changed for the Daleks, the point where the Daleks become weaker. Is that completely true? Well, the first story to take place after this Genesis story is Destiny, where the Daleks return to Skaro because they're in the middle of a war. Well, strictly speaking, they're in the middle of preparations for a war. The war itself hasn't actually taken place. The Movellans, who are disco-dancing robots, or indeed, ooh, that's a bit of a spoiler if you don't know, I'm sorry, are at war with the Daleks. The Daleks need an edge, and so they return to their ancestral home and try and dig up Davros. Except when you're watching this for the first time, when I was, 7, if that. All this was a massive surprise to me. In this story, the part of Davros is played by David Goodison. Now, a lot of people have said that the mask isn't as good as it was either before or after. I must admit, I beg to differ. Apart from the join around the mouth, which isn't the best in the world and could have done with a bit of talc in order to reduce the shine on the latex, it's fine. It's a marvellous performance. I think Davros hasn't altered that much since Genesis, and as an evolution works quite well. I don't have any issues with the performance, and to be honest, I don't really have much of an issue with the performances in this story at all. It is an extremely good story. It's one that I wondered why it hadn't been released on DVD for some time. So, if you already own it on VHS, why would you possibly buy it on DVD, apart from the boost-in quality? Well, obviously, as with all Doctor Who DVDs, you're looking for the extras. This one's got quite a few. Of course, you've got a commentary. You've got a nice Lalla Ward thing. It's nice to see her more involved with Doctor Who once again. You've got an Easter egg. Now, the Easter egg itself's a bit disappointing. It seems to just be some, clapperboard stills with the progressive Dalek dying on it. It's worth seeing. The one that does attract your attention are the Prime computer adverts. Now, if memory serves, and it often doesn't, Prime Computing I think it was an Australian computer program. I know the adverts weren't meant to be seen in this country, probably more to do with the exciting world of BBC copyright. But basically, he's playing the Doctor, which came as a bit of a surprise to me, dressed as the Doctor. This is Tom, and Lalla Ward's dressed in the Lalla Ward costume. At this point in the story run, K9 is still with us. I believe at this point it is still K9 Mark II. However, there was a whole BBC debate, should K9 meet the Daleks, and let's face it, it's kind of Cyberman versus Daleks. K9 could not be seen to lose to the Daleks, but the Daleks must be seen as a threat. So K9 is removed from this story by having computer laryngitis. Yeah, it's not a great plot device, but it is necessary in order for us not to have to deal with the whole who's better and a whole Harry Hill, let's sort it out with a big fight thing. I was talking about the Prime adverts. They are well worth seeing just as an oddity, but also, if you're into computing at all, they're well worth seeing just in order to show you how far things have come. I'd love to know how powerful those Prime computers were in comparison to, say, my PSP. There's obviously a photo gallery, and, of course, my favourite thing about a DVD, the info text. Yes, you can watch the episode while some words at the bottom of the screen, like a subtitle, tells you some interesting and rather nerdy facts about the show. Always a good thing. If they ever lost these, I'd be very, very miffed. Another thing, like, say, Daleks' Invasion of Earth, they've taken the graphics and the effects and given you the option of watching them with CGI effects. Now, I'd actually activated the CGI effects on my disc when I watched it the first time, and thought I hadn't, because I thought the effects weren't particularly good. For me, I would have redesigned the Movellan ship. I would have gone further. Now, I know there's an editorial decision to keep things fairly similar, just tidy them up, just make them a little bit better. But for me, I would have tried harder. You could have redesigned it, everything except the top half of the ship, have it descend, have it dig its way in, which I always thought was a little bit odd, and then work. You'll understand this when you finally see it. They're well worth seeing. They're a nice oddity, but I still think things could have been taken a little bit further. Another extra is a short film about Terror Nation. It's not in as much depth as I would have liked. It uses clips from the Alan Wicker interview, which is odd, because to be honest, I would like to have seen the full Alan Wicker interview, because I never have. Terror Nation is an interesting and intriguing character. Some people would describe him as a hack, but I would describe him as someone who really knew what he was doing, sort of. It's mentioned his dealings with Hancock, but it isn't gone into. It's as if these are the blurb on the back of a Terry Nation book rather than actual documentary about him. It feels long, but it doesn't feel long enough. It's a curious little thing. I'm not going to use the word curate's egg because I know that annoys a lot of people. It is interesting and indeed important to know that this is Romana 2 first story. There is a regeneration sequence which is very, very different from any regeneration sequence we've ever seen anywhere else. It's not violent, it's not intense, it's just someone trying on new bodies. It's as if the Gallifreyan physiology is in flux as soon as it's done, and you get to decide what you want. Perhaps that's something only female Gallifreyans can do, perhaps that's only something that other people... I just don't know. It doesn't really make sense, but for me, the Doctor's regeneration is a violent thing. Perhaps that's something to do with some sort of, and I hate using these words out loud, half-human physiology. Oh, I feel slightly ill. Either way, good story, good DVD, well worth seeing. Next time I will definitely review Unquiet Dead and get back to the 2005 run. Be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.